But after every talk, he would get an email from someone who says, I really didn't like what you said. It offended me. It wasn't that great. I thought you were this and you're that. After every time, this is the great Wayne Dyer. And what he would say was, my mind is clear, my heart is pure, my intentions are real. And after that, I'm not responsible for what people make of my words. That's the ultimate freedom I could give to people. And I think that's so powerful because so many people hold themselves back from worrying about what family member would say what YouTuber would say what. And we're all focused on that instead of having the incredible ripple effect with the infinite possibilities of putting our highest intentions out there.
Opportunities to have cognitive reframing.
Right, and to see things differently and to have that slight shift, much like I looked at, suffocation and those moments. Within one moment, the most, lowest vibratory level of suffering was turned into the most euphoric element. And so those things are always there, but we have to be able to open up our minds and our inner visions to be able to see that. And once we see that, we embody that, we attract that, and we live that. And I think in a way, it's for people, you could sit and wallow and stuff like that, but ultimately that's going to be your vision and stuff like that. And then you're able to slightly make a slight shift and everything change. What I love about
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Wonderful to be with you again. As Jacob doesn't realise that the camera's actually on you, adjusts his t-shirt. I have seen Jacob on the internet or listened to him on podcast shows. Jacob Cooper, welcome to the show.
An honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me, Karen. I've been very excited for this interview for a while.
I was just telling Jacob that one of my clients, one of my tribe, my online tribe, who's into all this stuff that I talk about, and I'm trying to say to him, you're a psychic. And he's like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. It's hard to argue with someone when they have a point of view, even if their point of view is not right. When you decide you're right about something, you get to be right about it, right? So he's like, no, I'm not psychic. So a couple of days ago, he reaches out to me and he says, you know what, Karen, I'm reading this amazing book called Life After Breath by Jacob Cooper. Have you heard of it? Maybe you should have him on your show. And I said, and you told me you weren't psychic?
Well, what I have to say to that person is your wish is my command. Here I am.
There you are. Exactly.
The law of attraction, right? You put it out there.
Attraction. But as you know, Jacob, I booked this like months ago, and then he's saying like 2 days ago, have you thought about having Jacob on your show? It's just a funny old world, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, he's like, maybe I can tune in to stuff. Yeah, we all can, of course. We can all tune in, but I'm sure you can give us some more insights into that. Let me read your bio and tell people a little bit about you who don't know about you. Jacob gained many insights about the mystery of life on Earth and on the other side of the veil from his near-death experience when he was a young child. He explored this further in past life regressions, and today shares how the hereafter can assist us in the here now. In addition to the peace and euphoria he felt in the afterlife during his NDE, Jacob wants people to know we can also experience these feelings in the physical world. He wants to remind us that we are so much more resilient than we imagine, and there is so much more to live for than we may believe right now. Today, Jacob is a clinical social worker, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist who specializes in past life regressions therapy. Inspired by his near-death experience and transformative encounters, he facilitates spiritual awareness and empowerment seminars. He's the author, as we said, of Life After Breath, How a Brush with Fatality Gave Me a Glimpse of Immortality. Death, even for a moment, changes everything. In Life After Breath, Jacob's near-death experience as a child ripped open an awareness between his physical world and the spiritual world. He lived but was forever changed. As he grew darkness and light led him on a roller coaster ride of turmoil, loss, discovery, and renewal. In his book, he faces the question of the hereafter, looks at life lessons, and examines what a connected awareness can mean to the human experience. He's currently working on another book. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. I might need your guidance for the title. I'm still stuck on it, so we have to talk.
It's good to sort of put that out to your tribe too. What do you think? I did that because when I got stuck on a title, and currently resides and practices in Long Island, New York. You can find Jacob's website, jacobcooper.com. Yeah, put it out to the tribe and say, this is what the book's about. Kind of thinking about a few different titles. What do you think? And I did that with the authors that were in my last book, and Sandra Champlain came up with the title because it was interesting. I had the title given to me called Surviving Death. And as you know, now names, you know, the beautiful lady that wrote the book Surviving Death, which is about NDEs. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Leslie Keane, is it?
Leslie Keane. And then she brought out the Netflix series, which is all about. So
exploding now. Yeah,
she's doing great work. Anyway, Cyrus was helping me on the book, and he said, you got to change the name. We can't have the same name as her book. And I'm like, But I love this name. And he convinced me, and I didn't know what the title was going to be. So I put it out to the trial. And Sandra Champlain came back and she said, what about Awakened by Death? And I'm like, yes.
I love Sandra. I saw that I was, with every interview, I always make sure to listen. And I saw that you were on Sandra like twice before, right? And she's just a lovely, lovely host. I love her program. She's an author too of a book. It's called, I Think We Don't Die. Yeah. So love Sandra. So,
she's doing amazing work in the awareness of the afterlife. Amazing work. And you know, the fact that she was so skeptical, it's so great. You know, a skeptic's view into the afterlife, I think she calls the book. It's wonderful for those people awakening to a new awareness of another reality, of, I'm going to rephrase that, of a truer reality, of the awareness of our home. I don't know, how do we put that? Maybe you can.
Yeah. Well, you know what I love is, I don't view that any person in any industry is better than another. I think everyone offers something unique. So you could be the brightest, most eloquent, whatever, but someone just might not relate to you. And so I think when you come from different necks of the woods, your vibe will attract your tribe, and you will be able to reach people, you know, that others, they could implode in flames and they could still not make an impact on.
Absolutely,
so,
Jacob.
You know, that's the amazing part.
That's so true. That is so true. And I met Sandra at the beginning of her podcasting journey, and we chatted as friends, and she said, you know, I've had psychics say that I'm going to be really successful at this, because she's a caterer, you know. And I looked into her timeline and I said, yeah. And then I was watching her podcast exploding, and so much more exploding than mine. And I'm scratching my head thinking, I've been doing this longer than you. Why is it? But she is attracting a different tribe than me. So because she's very focused on death and the afterlife, whereas my awareness is much broader and more expanded. And I'm eclectic, but I'm really attracting the people that want to take this information and do something with it in the world, rather than the seekers. So I call them the New World Teachers. So my tribe are the New World Teachers. They're the healers, or even if they're just cleaning up their own vibrations so that they can affect change in the world. But they're people that really want to make a difference in the world. So it's a different
tribe. I love about you off the bat is, I know you mentioned, I shouldn't say this out loud, but you have a Virgo moon, right? So you're very direct, very detail-oriented. You know, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. It's a great planet for communication, as is Gemini. But I came up to you and I said, I've got this book. She goes, I don't care about the book. I want to hear your story. People want to hear that, stuff like that. And, you know, you wanted to get to the heart of the issue. And it was just, I love that. It was just very genuine. Because at times, you know, you don't know someone, you're trying to, you know, say, I've got all these fancy things. So, you know, you want to sell yourself. I don't care. I want Jacob. I want you. And, you know, that was wonderful. And that's representative of your program, where you want You don't want the little fluff of things. You want the meat and bones of everything, and you want the meat and potatoes, rather, not bones. Who eats bones? But meat and potatoes. And that suits you, and I'm sure it's allowed you to attract the audience that you want. So
yeah, absolutely. That's so funny.
Outside those 10 or 15 who are going to put a thumbs down on my video, right? They're always, I don't know what these people do. Do they hide on YouTube and just press thumbs down buttons and hang out in the grandma's apartment?
I think we take
grandma's house or something. What does people do for a life?
I think we take all that stuff too seriously. I think people go thumbs down when you say something that they don't believe yet. Like, oh no, that's not true. And when we're talking about this stuff, we're expanding awareness, and a lot of people aren't there yet, and they just think, oh, that's impossible. No, that can't happen. I don't think that it has anything to do with whether they like you or they like me. It's to do with the information coming through. Like, I don't believe that. Thumbs down, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of the thumbs up are usually people saying, I like these people.
Well, what you just did was what I do full time. To put it in clinical terms, that's called cognitive reframing, right? You have some different perception, and you're able to see the other side of it. That's a beautiful. Wayne Dyer would always say, the moment you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And perception is our reality. But that's an excellent point. And some of the things that are so innovative are often rejected. My grandmother was telling me, she remembered when the Beatles came to America,
right?
And when they came in, the younger people going crazy, but the older generation had their arms crossed and their heads. And my grandmother was one of the only person who said, I like them. And other people were like, what? That it's just, you couldn't say that when they were around. And so you think of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, things are just innovated. They might take a bit of time to adjust, but once they do, oh boy, and I still find innovative people to be always innovative. They're always ahead of the time.
What is that Apple ad? I hate to sort of talk about marketing, but it's the crazy ones that change the world. It's, the ones that are considered crazy, considered woo-woo, considered insane, that do things that seem impossible, that talk about impossible things. They're the ones that change the world. And I'm all for that, right? Let's be crazy and let's change the world.
The issue now is we're going to have to come up with some new tricks, because you talked about Leslie Kean and surviving death.
Right.
And, every 5 seconds, I get an email from someone telling me that they've had a near-death experience. It's just, and I'm sure for you, like, people are telling you, I'm psyched, the world is really catching up. So I don't know, we might have to do like a transfiguration or something, more exotic to be different, because this abnormal is now the new normal.
Normal. Well, it's interesting.
Changing, and I love that. But
when you run in the consciousness crowd, it does seem like everyone's having the same conversation. But when you go out into the world, I'm away at the moment in the country, right? And so I'm surrounded by a different crowd of people. And they are not having this conversation. It's, we forget that the majority of the world are not having, even though millions are, there are billions who are not having this conversation. So we forget that we just can't have enough of it. I was watching online. We haven't even got into your story yet, but we'll get there in a minute. I was watching last night with my friend who I'm staying with, the interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, which has gone viral across the world.
I got a story about that in a moment, but yeah.
This is a conversation the world's having, but near-death experiences, life after life, is not a conversation that the world is having. They're talking about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and we kind of forget that it's just not in the mainstream, even though millions of people are talking about it. And like you say, you get someone every day says, I have an NDE, I have an NDE. It's up. And so I think that, so in the conversation last night, they were showing how the media, who repeatedly is pumping out a narrative, is making the minds of people believe something. And my friend had that viewpoint, and we were arguing, and she said, no, I think this, I think that. And I said, where do you get that information from? And it's from the mainstream media. So as this conversation went out to millions last night, just like you said, what did you call it? Cognitive
reframing.
There was some cognitive reframing happening in that conversation.
I like you're using some black belt moves right there. That's some Bruce Lee terms right there. Yeah. No, you're good. But it's funny, it's called LA Talk Radio, or Los Angeles Talk Radio. It's with one of my good friends, Dr. Michelle Cohn. And I go on LinkedIn and I see that she posted a segment that she had on E Entertainment, where she did a body language analysis of the interview.
Oh,
so it's just, that was really cool, where and this is what she's a clinical psychologist. She's been doing this for years. So she's always on the big program. So that to me was more fascinating as a therapist, to kind of see, because most languages, obviously not spoken, is within, body language, which has been, an issue for a lot of people, where obviously if you've got the technology to have video, but for people who are just talking on phones during this time, you could double talk, say one thing kind of mean another in a way, and people, wouldn't know. So, the body definitely speaks, but it's such a great reference. I look at, you're familiar with Plato, and I think he wrote this in the Republic, where he talked about the allegory of the cave, where, there were prisoners kind of shackled in a cave, and behind them were projected imagery, of what the people behind them wanted to see. And they broke free, by being able to take themselves out of the shackles and getting out of the cave. So in a sense, that was Plato talking about this, hundreds of years before today's times.
wow.
And that's very versatile in what you could think of it. I mean, I look at that for so many different ways. I mean, the near-death experience was an allegory for the allegory of the cave, but also
The allegory for the allegory. We're going to get into it in a moment, but I just want to talk about that. There is a book by Richard Bach, and the name escapes me. And he's talking about, in the book, he's writing about a hypnotherapist, right? And this hypnotherapist is exploring, or someone's exploring hypnotherapy, but he's seeing a hypnotherapist do that stage hypnotherapy. And there's a man on stage, and he puts him in a state where he says that he's in a circular prison, or a prison with no windows. And this man is literally trying to break out of this prison, and he's on stage with nothing around him. And he's going into complete panic because he feels imprisoned. But it's just I don't know, you've got better terms than me. He's just been put in a state. What do you call that? He's been given a suggestion and he's believing it.
Power to suggestibility, to find suggestions. Yeah, I as a hypnotherapist, I don't like staged hypnosis, because it gives us, it's so different than the work that I do. And obviously Hollywood has very much pathologized and stigmatized hypnosis, where really I view hypnosis as the most empowering exercise that we can do.
Yeah.
Where in a sense, people are able to take power of their subconscious to make it conscious. For instance, you want to lose weight and you're not able to understand why you're having these patterns. And you go back and then you recognize, oh, geez, I was physically abused as a child. And so now I'm having a weight buffer so that I'm putting up hazards so that people don't touch me,
Right.
or sexually abuse, whatever. So
Right.
in a sense, like, you're giving people power back with things that are just so far in their, doorway of the inner mind in this way. So that's what I love doing it professionally.
Yeah. You know what this book illustrated was that everything we believe is a form of hypnosis, that we create our reality through what we choose to believe. And just like I said, my friend or my client says, I'm not psychic, and I'm trying to punch holes in his arguments like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Everyone's psychic. He's like, nah. And then he comes out and he says, have you heard of this guy, Jacob Cooper, like 2 days before I talked to you? I'm like, you're not psychic? Yeah. So
there's one saying, one of the persons who endorsed my book, she helped mentor Teresa Caputo, the Long Island medium.
Okay, yeah.
A couple other mediums here in Long Island. Her name is Pat Longo, but she's got a wonderful saying that says, you're not sick, you're psychic. I love it. That's a good one. You're not sick, you're psychic, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they're having all these unexplained tendencies, or if they're self-medicating through food, or if they're getting panic attacks, anxiety, so much of it is just their empathing, and they're picking up on energies, and they just don't know that it's not theirs. And they just don't know, so.
I have a friend who was on drugs for most of her life, and then she started having some sessions with me years ago, and I started talking about all the stuff I talk about, and she said to me, are you surprised that I'm sort of, with you on a lot of the stuff that you talk about because I'm pretty out there? And I said, no, not at all. And she said, why? And I said, well, the only reason you were on drugs all those years is because you were an incredible empath and psychic, and no one told you how to handle it, and you couldn't handle it. So you numbed yourself for 35 years so you didn't have to feel. And she went, wow. Like that was, she'd been beating herself up for 35 years saying, I'm a terrible person because I'm taking drugs. But no one had ever actually explained that to her, that it's not that she was a terrible person. It's just that she just didn't know how to handle that empathy and psychic ability. And so it was just better to block it out. Just block it out.
Yeah. It's such a different dichotomy, the spirit realm and this realm, where the spirit realm is like the ultimate strengths-based. It's their cheerleaders. It's, people who believe in you more than you could ever imagine. In this world, it's, I can't speak for all, but it's very judgy, and it could be pathologized in a way. And so the moment that someone, I had a client I'll give you like an example. I know we're on the cognitive reframing thing. A client was telling me that they are defiant. They're, against their parents, they're defiant. They grew up that way. And so most people would say, oh, you bad kid, you this, you that. But, what I kind of thought was, wow, you have a lot of wherewithal to hold into your own conviction as a child, to hold into your own truth, to say no to adults. You're a very strong, independent person. That's remarkable. Some of the biggest people of changes have done that as adults, and we call them heroes. And so it's all a power. Labels have such a powerful connotation. And the gift that you gave to that person was to flip the switch and to see that weakness or that pathology or that burden as an incredible strength. And I think that's the greatest gift that we could give people, is to flip the script and to see themselves as innate strengths and not pathologies or weaknesses or burdens.
Yeah.
It's an amazing switch that could happen.
Which I'm sure you talk about a lot in your work and in your book. And that's really what this show and the book Awakened by Death is all about too, is seeing that the most unbelievable traumas that we can go through, death being one of them, can be the greatest gifts, can be the greatest transformative experience we ever have. Let's get into your story. I'm sure we've got lots more to chat about, judging from the beginning of this conversation.
I was reading that bio and I'm like, who's Jacob? Because I'm Jake's. I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, I've got to call you Jake, not Jacob?
No. You're saying all these nice things. And I'm like, who is that guy? I'm just a dude. I was like, thanks. But like, it's funny when you get out there in the public eye. I was once in upstate New York and I saw a picture of myself and I'm like, it's like on the street, whatever, they're advertising some event. And I'm like, really? I'm like, because in my mind, I'm like, whatever, I just go to work, I go home, I eat. I'm just a dude, whatever. But, when sometimes you hear these things, you're like, that's me. It sounds like someone else, so thank you.
Oh, well, that's you. So you were quite young when you had how old were you when you had your NDE, when your near-death experience?
I was 3 years old.
Very young.
At the time. So this was September of 1993, which gives my age away. But it was right before the Jewish high holiday of Yom Kippur, which is a day of atonement to meet the Creator. You're trying to really clean the slate of the year so that you go through the book of life and you have a year of health and prosperity. So it's like a year where you are preparing yourself to meet the Almighty. Little did I know that was such a different interpretation than what's in my own religion. It couldn't be more diametrically opposite of that God. So, but it's interesting.
So what happened, Jacob? What happened to you at 3 years old? You turned 30 last year. 31 this year. My
birthday is the same day as Shirley MacLaine and Barbara Streisand. It's April 24th. So not the same year. I'm not like 80 years. I don't want to whatever, but
Shirley MacLaine and Barbara Streisand. There you go.
Shirley's one of my idols. I love her guts. People don't speak about her enough. For a Hollywood star to write the book and create the movie out on a limb, it was remarkable. But
she's a game changer. Look, she was
real pioneering, trailblazing icon.
Trailblazing, absolutely. Oh God, we're getting off the topic. We're trying to get your story out there, but you have podcast, but we're getting off topic again. But I had this conversation with her in spirit, and I said to her, "What are you doing here?" It's a much longer story, this. And she said, I'm one of your teachers. And I said, are you? And she said, oh, God, Karen, do you think there was any coincidence that my books were the first books you ever picked up? And I went, oh, no. She's so matter of fact. You say I'm matter of fact. She's so matter of fact.
She has a lot of Virgo in her chart. If you look at it, a lot of Virgo in her chart. She's a Taurus, but I looked at her chart. There's a lot of Virgo influence. So that served her well, with the ability to be grounded and articulate and detail oriented and skeptic, as you saw in her early on, where she needed to have this clear, direct experiences to blow her mind. But she wasn't a cynic, but a student and a bit of a skeptic early on, in her development. So,
and her movie that she made of the book, Out on a Limb, I think it's free on YouTube. It's old now, but it's still fabulous. It's still wonderful. I've seen it so many times. Yeah, I love it too. Anyway, we're talking about you, Jake. Do I call you Jake?
Jacob or Jake. Go figure. The dad in Home Alone was like the spiritual. He was David in that movie. John Hurd, the late John Hurd.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Was like the spiritual, mystical guy. It's just funny how in different movies people could have such different roles. But yes, this is September of 1993. At the time, I had pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough, which is a highly contagious upper respiratory virus, with left untreated, could be fatal. And, ironically, I released my book in this particular time, which I don't want to get into specifics, but there's parallels, in a way with what I had and happening right now. But at the time, I went to a playground with family, friends. I went to the playground and I climbed a ladder, and after each rung of each ladder, my breathing was becoming a lot more belabored and difficult. And at the top of the ladder, going onto a slide, my breath was taken away from me. I began to suffocate. And when I suffocated, each part of my body could no longer operate. And so it's kind of like you take a power breaker in a home and you shut off one unit at a time. My body wasn't working. It's like you try to go into a car and try to work it, nothing was going. And so I basically stepped out of the car to kind of check what was going on, or stepped out of my body to kind of see what was happening. In the disembodied state, I was able to understand so much more. They say we use 5 to 10% of our brain. And I really, at 3 years old, I was able to see through and have transparency of my body and all different parts of it, from this higher awareness and higher intelligence. And the last part, my body that I looked at, it was my brain. And I was able to understand each particular component of my brain without going to a neuro program. And then I felt suddenly, due to the deprivation of oxygen, my brain literally heard a large crack, like a lightning sound. It was like the large crack that I heard. This was due to the deprivation of oxygen. It's as if you take a plug out of a wall and just yank it as hard as you can. And so once my brain felt like it cracked open, that's when God came in, as a saying would say. And then I raced down this insane tunnel at some insane speed, but this was upwards and upwards, the innermost part of my being, with no limitation. And I could feel myself vibrating at an insane speed. And as I was vibrating and soaring, I recognized there was no limitation with how high I could soar, how euphoric I could feel, within that. But then I crossed over and I was able to become aware of a palace that was right to the right side of my head. And this palace had an incredible light that I just basically had to shield myself from. And it was right on the right side of my head, which was on top of the slide. And this palace, for practical states, I could just say was the palace of the all that ever is and ever was, or what we would view as God. And when I looked at this light, it was this brilliant eternal light that I just basically, I was so euphoric at looking at it that I almost had to shield myself. And I was able to see angels around this palace, around this domain. And then next moments later, I had a brown and gold kind of ray of light. And I was able to have this high-pitched, high awareness of what I would label as Christ consciousness. It wasn't that Jesus was in front of me. It was like a pitch of the other side, or a frequency that I tuned into. It was almost kind of like a sacred high octave energy. It's as if in our body, we're used to limitations of the body through the bio-neurochemical standpoint. When you cross over to the other side, there's these insane octaves that you connect to, and there's just very little limitations, but I understood that Christ consciousness was an incredibly high vibratory, octave that I was connecting to, and I felt quite comforted, within those moments. And obviously I had an inner dialogue where I was worried about leaving my parents, not life behind, and the trauma of suffocation that I had, and that was subsiding as I was in this energy field. And moments later, my spiritual guides joined me on the slide, and they literally, I had a male and female guide. At the time, I knew their name. Looking back on it, I debated, but it's not so clear. But looking at them, they were these huge guides. They were just massive, and they were most beautiful, mystical beings. And the second I knew them, I felt so stupid for forgetting them. Like, they were always there with me in the doorway of my heart. They were the closest thing to me that I could have, my spiritual guides. And I saw them coming down with me on the slide, and I was pushed down through this energy, and then my body laid flatlined. Moments later, people saw my body was irresponsive. I could see that my body was on the ground, but I had a form that was next to my body, and I could tell that I had a shape, and this was my, my soul body or electromagnetic field, whatever it is. I couldn't necessarily see it, but I felt, myself, that I had a form, that I was aware that other people could see me, but I couldn't see this form. And I could read their thoughts. I could see their auric fields, spirits around them. And I just knew everything about them that I wasn't privy to before, and then moments later when they were calling me, it was the most frustrating experience. I could understand how spirits, really try to communicate with us, and we don't listen. So there's so much more that happened. But, if you have any questions about, there's more to it, but I'm sure.
I got a million questions.
Ask and you shall receive.
Never empty of questions. Just the logistics. So you had the breathing problem at the top of the slide, and you've actually left your body, and your body slid down, and you're out of your body when you see the body slide down the slide.
Yes.
And then you're witnessing the little 3-year-old. One of the questions I want to ask is about the euphoria and this life, which we talked about in the bio. But another thing I want to say is, what Brad, the person who was talking about your book, said, that what was fascinating to him was that when you were outside your little 3-year-old body, you were no longer a 3-year-old. Like, you understood yourself as infinite consciousness. Is that right? Is that what you were experiencing?
Yeah.
Not the mind of a 3-year-old. And
yeah. To some, that's the most controversial element of my near-death experience. Near-death experience in general, they're getting a lot more understanding and universality. Obviously, we said there's a long way to go, but mine is quite unconventional in a sense that I wasn't some person working in a marketing firm, and all of a sudden I had some crazy, shakeup of consciousness or physical kind of experience, that led to the NDE. This happened at the very onset of this lifetime at 3 years old. What I will say to viewers who are confused is, we are not our linear ages.
oh yeah,
We are not our bodies.
yeah,
We are not the ego. We are not this personality that we've developed. We are an eternal book that far surpasses this one page that we are identifying with. We are more than the external portrayal that others have of us in this lifetime. And so I think a lot of us confuse the surface level consciousness and the temporary kind of form that we have in this body in this lifetime, in this one particular page or chapter. We are eternal book. And so I understood that this experience, it's almost, I'm looking at it like today was a full-blown soul experience, and the soul is something that you carry with you forever. It's not limited by any age. I just think the ability to articulate, to integrate it, to externalize the soul, or the guitar and the music player being in harmony, takes time,
Absolutely. And we're so hypnotized with the whole age thing, especially women who worry about getting older, like me. I love that, because, people that are awake in the dream, awake in the body, don't see people as their age. They see people as their soul. They don't even see people as their experience or lack of experience in this physical earth, in this particular lifetime. They see the eternity of the experience of the soul and relate through that relating rather than through age relating. I remember as a kid looking at parents, adults, and thinking how stupid they all were.
Still are, yeah.
And only wanted to hang out with my peer age group, you know, like, and so many of us do that. We want to hang out with lots of people go around, and interestingly enough, I attract a lot of people into my clients and the show that are around my age, which I find interesting, but not all. The very old and the very young, and yeah, we're all just a soul. We are not our age. That is just, yeah.
We're not our bodies.
Not
you know,
our
we are
bodies,
not
not our age.
consciousness produced by the body. So this was a full-blown experience of the soul. And so the chain of events never changed. I was able to understand it from a much broader vantage point of the soul. But the ability to integrate it and to make sense of it and to have a language for it, for an adult, is a challenge. When you think of these terms on the other side, it's a challenge for an adult. And so for me, you know, I followed conventional research, which they'll say an infant or a child, when they have an NDE, takes around 20 to 30 years to integrate. And I could attest that it took me around 20 years to process this. I kept it quite buried. It was there, but almost kind of like a beach ball that you try to bog down to fit in. Eventually, I was just like, oh, screw it. It just had to come up. I couldn't, you know, run and hide from it anymore. And I think to survive, I needed to do that for a bit of time, but to thrive, I needed to be honest and truthful with this. And I hope that that's the case for all seekers, is to live their truth, you know, and not someone else's version of what they want you to be.
So, yeah, absolutely. When you were telling the story of it, I just got, you know, intense training. It was like you were going through an intense training at 3 years old.
Yeah,
yeah. I had an 88-year-old on the show last week, speaking of age, and she said that she never went to school or university here in the physical world, but she had her star mentors teaching her all the time. So she said, I went to the universe city, and I just loved that, the university.
Free tuition. You don't have to worry about term papers or your research. And, you know, it's just so interesting, the term education. Because after this, there was a society that tried to get me to turn into something in order to be something. They tried to program my intellect, and this was very much a society that was based on intellect. It was based on information. It wasn't ever a society that said you have the answers inside of you. It wasn't a society that said to be the embodiment of yourself. It said you have to work to these things to be a full expression of that. And, you know, and so it was a lot more focused on, you know, what we are doing than who we are being. And so, you know, you almost had to do all these things to become something. And what I learned in my near-death experience is we're chasing all these things, but we already are eternal. We are that sacred soul. We don't need any of these things. We're just here to express the beauty that is inside, to bring in, you know, we're here to bring heaven down to earth, but I think we are heaven down here on earth, if that makes sense.
We are heaven on earth, yeah.
You're a part of heaven on earth, but it's fascinating. But I think the ultimate education is, I could agree with that person, is, at least for me, that experience from the other side, and subsequently, you know, being able to channel information and to have that guided. Because I think in our society, we're taught to do it on ourselves, and we're taught to be Mr. and Mrs. Atlas. And once we surrender, there's great power that could come not from us, but through us, from much greater sources of intelligence and wisdom and guidance than our limited consciousness in our body could ever have.
Absolutely, Jacob, absolutely. You spoke about the frequency of the Christ consciousness. I love that. The what did you call it? You called it frequency. You called it a bandwidth of frequency, right? A pitch.
A non-Wi-Fi frequency.
Non-Wi-Fi frequency.
It was like Verizon on steroids.
What was like what on steroids?
Verizon on steroids. Verizon, I guess, in the US is like the top tier, you know, internet connection and phone.
Okay. Yeah.
Top connection, top
Verizon
5+ bars, right? So.
And the euphoria of it, and everyone talks about the euphoria of the other side, and obviously you've heard many NDEs. There's many different experiences of the other side. There's just not one place we go. There's different frequencies and dimensions and experiences we can all have in our training. I think that all NDEs are training, really intense training. Have you felt that same euphoria much, being back in your physical body, that same frequency, have you felt that?
Yes. In one of the chapters in Life After Breath, I speak about an out-of-body experience that happened, almost 20 years after my near-death experience, which really came out of nowhere. And I woke up and I was literally out of my body, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, here we go again, kind of thing. But, it was like something out of a movie. I was meditating, I practiced, but I never had this before. And literally for several weeks, I was looking down, out of my body, and I could feel that when I would speak, I would feel the vibrations. I would be able to feel my own elements, such as water, such as fires, such as, air. I would be able to connect to all the elements. And, it's all the things that I learned about, but I had the, direct experience of it again in the body. And for whatever reason, I think within our chart period, sometimes we're meant to have these eye-opening experiences. Ultimately, if we were to have it all the time, then we would be over there and not here. I think sometimes we have to have a bit of the human part, and sometimes that part is, forgotten, so that we're able to really evolve and recenter. And, we're not immune. I think no one's immune from the human part. We're not a constant climactical experience. We go through ups and downs of being in the body and what comes with it. And sometimes the forgetfulness that could happen within moments, and how challenges allow us to really rise to the occasion and dig into a deeper gear, than before. But this experience happened in a synagogue around that same time, 20 years later, in the month of September, around the time of Yom Kippur. And usually synagogues were places where I felt quite restricted. I never felt comfortable in a suit or a tie, or I hated it. For me, as you could tell, I'm a Levi's t-shirt and jeans guy. That's my comfort zone. But when I was sitting in the chair, I literally left my body and I tuned into my animal totem, and I literally flew around the room, and I could feel wings coming out of my chest, like through the sides of it by my shoulders. And I felt myself lifting out of body and joining my totem. And I could see, looking down, of the one strand of energy that connected every participant in the room. And for me, I always was taught that we are one, but it just goes the ear out the other. It's like, it's nice. But when you have the direct experience and the validation right in front of you, and that was amazing, as well as being able to really access this intense energy within myself, through the elements and third eye explosion. And this was, I personally, I don't know which one. If you ask me, you have the NDE, you have the OB, which one? I'm like, either or. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, I'm fine. That's cool. Tomato, So.
You're quoting all these American things that I don't know.
Oh, no. Okay. Let me.
Michael Jordan, I heard of. LeBron James, I think he's some sort of
LeBron
athlete.
James is one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
Okay.
Michael Jordan, when you say that you're the Michael Jordan of, that means you are the best of your possible things. So. Yeah.
So you've had the euphoric experience, but only when you've left the body. You haven't had it in the body, like just in daily life, bipping along, driving the car, washing the dishes.
When I got my book contract, that was one of the closest things I could have. Not to blow what up at my publisher, but getting that, I was about to board a plane, is just a reference for taking off. And right as I was about to board the plane, I got this notification. From an agent that I got accepted. So that was it. But, for me, I find that when I'm very grounded, I'm still able to feel that intensity. We have a saying that I was taught within my practice, that many times for us to feel balanced, we need to balance our elements of energy. And so when we're thinking too much, we have a hot head or fire in the head. When we're relaxed, we're cool-headed. And when we're confident, we have a fire in the belly, And so from the body, I look at the body as a great opener as energy, not something that you avoid to, but rather the body, I think, as an access to really integrate, this heightened energy. As, I think all of us are these infinite souls here in the finite body. We have the ability to integrate that. So I do a lot of different self-induced healing techniques to bring down a lot of that fire into the core. So then ultimately you could be able to speak from the fire within.
And when you have a fire in your base chakra, that might be a different experience.
Yeah. But I'm a big believer in balancing, energy and having an open heart, an open mind, and an open and connected gut. I think those are big energy centers that I try to work.
I have a girlfriend who teaches CAP. It was developed by an Chinese-Australian man, and it's Kundalini, it's CAP, C-A-P, Kundalini activation process. And he's, getting people to, it's, I'm not going to go into it, but it's like bringing that fire that we have in our base chakra, up through all the other chakras, so that it sort of is invigorating all the energy centers, Kundalini, as many people have you had a Kundalini experience, Jay?
I mean, I would say somewhat. In my practice, we do something called Sleeping Tiger, which essentially, I speak about this in my book, where you put your legs up, put your arms up, and you lie on your back. And so from that experience, literally, I could do Sleeping Tiger, and it would be no difference if I was sleeping or if my legs up. In a sense, there was this energy that was holding me up. At first, when you try to do it, you shake, you vibrate, you cramp up, you're like, what is this? But eventually, when you're connected to that powerhouse, that's your center, that's your power center. And everything was just floating. And I kind of, my body was just elevated and held up like as if I was on a pillow or a cloud that was holding up my whole body. And I would do this frequently. And, it's been a while since I've done this, but I would say that's like my closest thing, when I was able to just lift my legs and arm and the head almost in the air. And literally I would feel like I was sleeping on the most comfortable pillow.
Beautiful.
Pretty crazy.
As you were describing that frequency of the Christ consciousness, that pitch, I love the way you call it a pitch. I was thinking that bandwidth, that Wi-Fi bandwidth, that pitch, that frequency is the frequency that higher dimensional beings, some have recognized them as extraterrestrials, that's their default setting. Like that's their normal. Whereas for us humans, we're like reaching for it, grasping for it. We're trying to get there. And we're doing things like Sleeping Tiger and CAP sessions and yoga sessions and meditation and hypnotherapy. We're so trying to find that default setting that they live in. They have that understanding of unconditional love and unity with all. And it just excites me, Jake, to think that when humanity at large rises to that bandwidth, to that pitch as their default pitch, what is possible for planet Earth and for the human collective? It just excites me to think about that. Might not happen in my lifetime, but it'll happen.
I think in a way, I look at the micro, our body, who we are, as no different than the macro. We are all connected. And so much like we come into this body with this infinite soul to try to transcend it, I think on a collective, we try to transcend the planet. And so that the body and the soul are not at war with each other, but rather the inside overrules the outside, so that we're able to live from the inside out versus the outside having more of a weight over the inside. And if we're able to do that, we're able to reawaken a new earth. From a heightened sense of connectivity, we're bringing heaven down to earth from each person's connection with the in and the out, so that they're not at war with another, but rather within this body, the inside is what we connect to, so that we can connect to the outside. So not that we're ignoring the inside and we're connected to the outside, if that makes sense. I think we're here to live from within.
Absolutely, because it's all, the jewel you're looking for is in your own pocket, as has been said. It's all within us. Everything we're looking for is within us. I was having a fabulous conversation with Michael Tamora as a guest teacher. You might like to come in as a guest teacher into my online groups. Each month I invite someone for the show to come in and chat to my little
It
tribe.
would be a lifelong honor, my friend. Just sign me up. Where?
Oh,
Sign still delivered.
sign me up.
Know.
We could talk about cognitive. As much as I teach this stuff, I don't have all the lingo. Cognitive. What did you call it?
Cognitive reframing.
Reframing, because it's actually what I do in my sessions with people, but I just didn't have that label.
It's funny how we like have these complex terms for things that are so simple to us. You know,
we could talk about that. I talk about that all the time, I have to say. But
H2O, or I could say I'm drinking water. We're doing the same thing.
Exactly.
Who cares?
You know, yeah. Michael, I know he was talking about different levels of soul evolution as we are here physically on Earth. And he was talking about at the end of the second level or the third level, he taught about like a clock face, like a quarter. He said that people are starting to wake up to life is not about what we can get, but what we can find within ourselves. They're just starting to it's starting to dawn on them. And I think that is the audience that I'm attracting. So many people think that I'm going to feel good when my book comes out.
Or when a checklist for when we allow ourselves to feel good, you know, so.
And something that he said that hit me, and it hit many people because I put up the highlights on my show, is that time in your life, that evolutionary time, is a time when life doesn't work for you like it works for everybody else. You know, the success doesn't come, the money doesn't come, the lover doesn't come, the baby doesn't come. And so you're bumping up against the traumas in your life and looking to overcome the traumas so that you can feel better. But life is actually saying feeling better or getting what you want is within, which is what you were saying. It's like all within you. It's that connection to your soul. It's that evoking that energy that you are, and seek that and not to the outside circumstance. So that's what we're playing with in that sort of second and third evolutionary process, which is, I see it all the time. I see it in my own life, which is difficult because when stuff happens and we're upset, we think this happened in my life, therefore that's making me upset. Or when stuff happens and we're euphoric, this happened in my life, therefore I'm euphoric, rather than seeing that our emotional state is all about how we flow our energy and how we connect to the internal soul or wisdom or light or whatever.
It's an inner choice. And isn't it amazing how we have people who have everything and they have nothing, and people have nothing who have everything, you know? So
exactly,
it's a choice. And that's the power of the inner game that we have, and that inner connection. At 3 years old, I had this euphoric experience, and, you know, I recognized that it's all within our backyard. And Buddha, for instance, was the same thing when he grew up, you know, as a prince, and he had that lifestyle, but it wasn't conducive. It wasn't stimulating, and he chose another gear, another dimension, another palace within himself versus the outer palace. And so I think there's not that becomes a problem, because I think how we view ourselves is the biggest vantage point with its influential point on how we'll view our life. The moment we see ourselves as beyond a physical being, we see ourselves as a soul, and that comes with so much. But I learned from my experience in a playground that we are all our brothers and sisters keepers. We are all just children of God's playgrounds here to play on this earth, and we are responsible for another. And I think really people have a hard time with that because they identify with such things that are so meaningless, and they have no weight, and they are not reflective of who we are, the age, the body, the income, the 401k, and all these things are so temporary. And so the soul doesn't want to take, it wants to have a ripple effect. It wants to have something that it could leave this world behind, and experiences that it could take with it. And that's what it wants. And I think what I learned through my near-death experience was the illusion of finite. From looking at the inner depths of finite, when you think of that, you think of suffocation, you think of death. And from looking at that in its eye, I was able to see the great shadow of the eternal light behind it, that was there. And so I think that really, for people who have experiences that happens on a different level,
I just had a drop, a download.
Yeah.
You were thinking, or an insight, download.
I found the infinite behind the illusion of finite. And I think really that gave me an understanding that this world is just merely an illusion. The illusion is not the other side. That's the real. I was taught that this thing is not a human thing, but a spiritual thing, not reserved for deities, but that's all our phyla.
Yeah.
And so I think part of this is getting past the illusion of the material so that we could remember who we are, what we're forever connected to, and to have windows without walls with our connectivity to our fellow brothers and sisters.
Say that again, windows without walls.
Well, that's a Rumi quote. If you're familiar with Rumi, who was a Sufi poet, he would talk about windows without walls, just clear connectivity, clear sight, clear awareness without any barriers.
As you were talking, the insight was the finite and the infinite. So to find the infinite, you have to go in. It's like insight. You have to go in to have the sight. It's like incurable. In order to find the cure, you have to find it in. It's all pointing in. All these words are sort of pointing inside us. So
what you need to do is to get that statement copywritten. Because I find when I do these talks, I listen to someone else. I'm like, didn't I say that 3 weeks ago? Like there's one talk that I heard. It must be we're connected to like a similar kind of thing. As even, and so it takes away originality in a way, because we're all connected to a same type of download. We get that. But I kept on saying in every interview that there was a macro near-death experience that we're all having. Like, the world is having an NDE in a sense that the finite reality of the body is being expedited. It's being sped up. That's nothing new, right? With all these people concerned about, this past year and everything that happened, whatever your viewpoint on it. And so I think that's a very valuable place to have. We were able to face our existence in this lifetime head on and not just cruise with life, but rather live it from a deeper purpose. But I think in a way, the whole world is having a near-death experience where for so many different perspectives, the world that they had is, in rehabilitation is jeopardized, and they have to almost go into another gear to exist and to live and to have oxygen. And, I think that's what's happening, where much like I was suffocated in my NDE, people are just, through what's happening on a larger perspective or in a smaller perspective, people sometimes feel out of breath, out of air, fatigue. And so when that happens, to survive and thrive, you have to be able to tune into another gear, and that is within. So I think that's happening on a larger scale today.
Absolutely. The world is going through a near-death experience. Absolutely. Somebody else said that on my show recently too. You're talking about Wayne Dyer before. Wayne Dyer was classically known for this story where he was at a radio station being interviewed, and everyone at the station was really upset because the station was closing down and they're all losing their jobs. So he came into this radio station and everyone's in upset. They're all pissed off because they're all losing their jobs. Cognitive reframing. So here's Wayne doing his cognitive reframing.
Again, he's a doctor, right? He's got a psychology background, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my new favorite word. my favorite word from Michael was the divine. Oh God, I've forgotten it already. The divine choreography is what he said. When he died, he saw the divine choreography. Well, when he was dying.
We should title this talk Cognitive Reframing, and then we'll have the American Psychological Association tuning into this stuff and
cognitive reframing. But he was going around talking to all these people who were so upset, and he was doing his cognitive reframing. And he said to one guy, if you didn't have this full-time job, what would you be doing? And he said, I had written this play or movie or orchestra, something. He'd written something, and for years he'd wanted to get it happening, but he just didn't, because he went to work every day and, to pay the bills. And he said, just think about this as an opportunity to finally live your passion and live your desire. Instead of being upset, oh my God, I'm losing my job. He's like, oh my God, I have this amazing opportunity. So he was doing that with everyone in the station. He was turning it from
flipping the switch.
Flipping the switch. And this guy that he spoke to he went on to write some, I can't remember what it was. I've listened to the story, I forget the details, but he wrote some opera or something that went on to be really well known and famous. And had he not been fired from his job, his day job, that would never have happened. So if only we could see the troubles in our lives as opportunities for something else, something new, something more possible. And just like you said, the world's going through a near-death experience, people losing their jobs, people getting sick, people going through death. It's all opportunities to have a cognitive reframing
Right. And to see things differently and to have that slight shift, much like I looked at, suffocation and those moments, within one moment, the most, lowest vibratory level of suffering was turned into the most euphoric element. And so those things are always there, but we have to be able to open up our minds and our inner visions to be able to see that. And once we see that, we embody that, we attract that, and we live that. And I think in a way it's for people, it's, you could sit and wallow and stuff like that, but ultimately that's going to be your vision and stuff like that. And then you're able to slightly make a slight shift and everything change. What I love about Wayne, I speak about this in my book, is when he passed away, I was never a follower of him. In a sense, I just thought he was some hay house guy who was born under some rainbow in Maui that I just couldn't relate to. He was just so, he was in this world, but not of this world. He was, but when he passed away, he lived a couple of minutes from me in Long Island for X amount of years, and he taught it at a college, locally. So his stuff is still here. His energy is very much still strong here. But he said, I'm going to be helping you with your book and guiding you. And I'm like, say what? Like me, like who am I for you to be helping me? Like, I'm like, this is very self-aggrandizing. Like for me to think that Wayne Dyer would waste his time, even as a near-death experiencer. And then a couple moments later, a couple months later, whatever, I was doing a YouTube interview with Trisha Barker on her show. And I have someone who looked at the video, and she goes, I'm going to make you a star. I'm going to be your guy. And she basically tried to do what, Usher did with Justin Bieber, where he found him on YouTube and tried to make him into a star. And so Wayne was behind her in writing her book. And Wayne was behind and helped out Anina Morjani, who endorsed my book. And so you see how things work, where Wayne helped out someone and they help the next person and spirit works through them. It's just amazing. But one thing I loved about Wayne is, he does this with so many people. He just connects strings. Brilliant. But after every talk, he would get an email from someone who says, I really didn't like what you said. It offended me. It wasn't that great. I thought you were this and you're that. After every time, this is the great Wayne Dyer. And what he would say was, my mind is clear, my heart is pure, my intentions are real. And after that, I'm not responsible for what people make of my words. That's the ultimate freedom I could give to people. And I think that's so powerful, because so many people hold themselves back from worrying about what family member would say what YouTuber would say what. And we're all focused on that instead of having the incredible ripple effect with the infinite possibilities of putting our highest intentions out there. And so that was amazing words from him. So.
I want to just reiterate what you just said, because when you started talking about Wayne, he showed up and he said to me, I'm guiding him. I'm one of his guides. And then in the next breath, you said, he said to me, I'm guiding you with your book. And I'm like, that's why I'm going.
What I love about him is he was so honest. Like, he would take a book, like so for instance, when Anita's book came, or other authors, he would like take it and like throw it against the wall. When you write like 40 books and you get like a book that's not up to par, he'll rip it apart. He was a great editor, but so many of the great books that we see, he was so behind, and he did it with the way of humor and brilliance and compassion, but he was just above this. And he would wake up at around 3:00 in the morning and do his writing. And that's when he was most open. He would recommend other people to do that, but not everyone had that gear. He was just made of a different kind of ilk than a lot of people. He just was.
So
he was special.
Jake, do you chat with him in spirit? Do you have that sort of,
all
awareness?
the time?
Yeah.
All the time. What I love about Wayne is we both like tennis. Like, he was a tennis player. He was an athlete. But he's also hilarious. Like, people forget, like, he's a funny dude. Like, he's very down to earth. He's like we also have a competitive nature where we like to one-up people. So, like, as a joke, like, when he would write a book, people would say, this is that. He would say, oh, you know what? That's nice, but I have 40 bestsellers, stuff like that. Like, he was very, very joking with, but meant it in a good way. So I gravitate to that very genuine, very real personality. And anyone who could laugh and not take themselves seriously is my kind of person.
Absolutely. I've got so much to
I
say
think
about Wayne.
we have too many tightwads in this planet. It's insane.
You said that he lives up the road from you and you didn't really tune into him until he left his body. Did you have any thought of regret that you didn't meet him better physically when he was?
Well, this was in his younger days. What was interesting was he was at a school that he talks about called St. John's University, which is, a private college around 25, 30 minutes away from me. He was about to get tenure, but there was this other calling in him that wanted to write this book. And he said, I don't want tenure, which is like turning down the lot. It's like every professor's dream. Right. Then he got his own parking spot, his own office. And he said, no, I want, there's something else in me that needs to happen. So this is very early on before he boomed. He literally closed the door in a hotel room. And I think he wrote, it was Erroneous Zones, which was a bestseller. Yeah. Again, that's about cognitive behavioral therapy, Erroneous Zones, that book. Wayne started off very much psychological, and then afterwards he got spiritual psychotherapeutic and very much up there, as he kind of took that hat off a bit more. But definitely he grew up, he lived maybe 10, 15 minutes away from me. And then, most of his life, I think he was in Boca Raton and Maui and stuff like that.
So he lived there before you lived there. So, because you're a lot younger than him. So before you, because I saw him speaking in Sydney years ago, and I have regret. He was standing at his books, out in the hallway, out in the big sort of hallway, because we're in a big conference center. And I was walking, there's that guy that was on stage speaking, and we both did a right turn and like walked in the different direction and went to a cafe and sat down. We both sat down, looked at each other, and we said, why did we do that? Like, instead of walking up to him and hugging him and saying, oh, you were amazing, thank you so much, we just didn't take that opportunity to meet him because we were thinking we don't want to seem like silly fans, or, we had some ego BS going on. And we both sat down.
You're going to kill me, but undoubtedly he would have given you his time.
Oh, absolutely. He was standing there and no one was around him because it was before he was like big, and he was standing there alone, smiling at us as we were approaching, and then we walked in another direction. But what he said on stage just changed my life. And it was this. He was this sort of, it might have been after that experience, another experience where I saw him talk on stage. He's this big guru talking to like thousands of people. And he's talking about his kids berating him for not being this. He said he was rampaging around the house looking for his keys, yelling and screaming, where are my keys? Where are my keys? And one of his daughters put her hands on her hips and said, if only if your kids, your fat followers could see the big guru now, And he was saying this on stage, and everyone cracked up laughing. And to me, the way that he could joke about himself not being the sort of peak all the time just made me feel so much more comfortable just being human. Do you know what I mean? And that just spoke volumes to me at that stage. And
I think this is a quality of an old soul where they're comfortable with themselves. They don't take themselves too seriously. Right. But have you found that when someone is comfortable with who they are, you feel comfortable with being who you are? Exactly. It's like an ocean. It's very open. Whereas people are very tight-wadded. You measure and you get tripped up and you judge. It's like I was watching Teresa Caputo on, a couple of years ago. She was on Anderson Cooper's show, and you could tell the energy of the crowd was skeptical, and it seemed like there was like a skeptical nature. And as incredibly gifted as she is, you could tell that she was thrown off her game a bit. She wasn't, on her game. It had nothing to do with, whatever And so I think in a way, no matter how much you have inside of you, if you're around someone or an energy that's just very dense and not inviting, that throws you off. It gets in your head, And so my biggest goal is, as a therapist, is just to be real and raw and comfortable, because nothing makes me smile more than other people just letting go and being themselves. I think that's great. And everyone talks about life purpose, and as if, that was just in front of some crowd, speaking in front of thousands of people and being the Dalai Lama. I think in a way, some of our life's purpose is just to be you, because as Mr. Rogers would say, no one could be you like you. It's true. No one
could be you like you. Again, quoting some Americanism. So. I do know who Mr. Rogers is, but
yeah. I'm throwing a lot of American days, but it's true. I think the closest thing I have to perfection is being true to yourself. No one could do that like you.
What were you going to say when I interrupted you with the rest of my Wayne story? You said, "Oh my God," and you're about to say something.
No. I just know countless people that he would talk in the hallway with, and they became friends with them.
Oh yeah.
He was, he just wanted to just be like everyone else. He didn't want to be anything out there, which is a segue to, the rest of the part with my near-death experience, where my body was laying flatlined, and literally I looked up and I saw hundreds and thousands of angels, and these were childlike angels literally in front of me, and they were brown and gold kind of color. And at the moment, I still had some doubt. I'm like, I thought I was just making this up, but it was a filter, and it was right in front of me, and it was just an endless sea of angels, and they were sending, energy to the situation. And, moments later, I had my soul family join me, and between them and my spirit guides, I was posed a question as to what I would do, within this experience, if I would stay on the other side with them or if I would stay in my body. And then I said, well, if I do stay in my body, what is going to happen? What will this life be? What is this about? And so I knew I had an instant moment to make that question, but I went out on a limb, no pun intended, and I asked that question, and they showed me different imagery of different lifetimes that I had in different existences. The most close to existence was a lifetime in which I committed suicide, and I was like a big kind of figure and a teacher, and I just hit rock bottom. I took my own life.
Wow.
And which really in many ways relates to the NDE in so many ways in my charting period. But then I saw myself in this lifetime speaking in front of people and being a healer. And much like Wayne, when I saw myself speaking in front of a crowd, it's not that I felt superior or just some pompous guru in front of people. It was that I was one with the energy.
Right.
And I think, the most isolating experience that we could have is when we feel above something or separate from something. That's not a good feeling. That's a very low vibratory feeling.
Right.
And so I was one with the message, one with the energy. And I said, as beautiful as the other side is, bringing the other side down to earth is a unique window that I have. And I couldn't say no to that. And within that thought, everything dissipated, and I was about to wake up in a hospital bed before I just asked, how do I know that this vision will come true? My guides really told me to really watch your thoughts, because those are the direct implication of the life that you'll live. They are indeed our greatest superpower of how high we'll soar or how diverted we'll be from our life path. And in that moment, I woke up on a hospital bed. And to this day, I remember it. My mother told me that I ran around the room after a little bit and I kicked my doctor. I was so angered by the insane transition from being on the other side to now in a cold hospital bed, that between the trauma, suffocation, between all these experiences, I had so much pent up emotion in me. It just manifested itself as anger, where I just almost felt like I would be on the red carpet interviewed on, international television like Oprah or something like that. Instead I was, on the hospital bed, but thank God for that doctor. They saved my life. And my brother, who also caught it a couple of days after me, joined me as well too in the hospital with this virus, but he didn't. At least I know he hasn't told me yet. He didn't happen to happen to have an NDE.
An NDE.
But,
when you were talking about being given that choice,
the decision,
decision, you're going to stay, you're going to go. Yeah, I got this, like, given a choice point, another choice point, and then you say that you saw in a past life that you had made a decision to, like, no, I'm out of here. Yeah, you made a choice. Like, no, too hard, out of here. So they were giving you that choice again. What are you going to do now? Like, terrible situation. You're going to stay? You're going to go? What are you going to do? It's that beauty of giving us that choice. I love that we have this ultimate choice in what we do with our lives. Like, when I was watching the Da Vinci Code, there was something where he says, this is God's power here on earth. And I remember turning to my husband at the time and I said, what do you think God's power here on earth is? And he's like, I don't know. And to me, it is that decision. It is that choice. It's like our choices in what we think, our choices in our perspective and our perception, our choices is our power here on earth. It's
a great superpower. And
superpower.
I learned to choose yes to life, to choose yes to giving, to choose yes, to something that, to me, what was more comfortable was being over there. What was more impactful was being right here in this body.
Exactly.
What was more euphoric was over there. But to me, what was more impactful was bringing that euphoria down to here. And that unique window, that unique experience I'm very grateful for, although it was a double-edged sword. And I get a lot more into that in my book, where what life was like having that experience, and the timeline of it and how that impacted my development. I think that's very important. And the reason why I got so personal in my book was not to give myself a pat on the back or self-congratulatory kind of things, but rather, like we said, for other people to take ownership of their experiences. If all I'm known when I leave this planet is an NDE guy, I haven't done my job. Now, if I'm known for other things, and if other people are able to hear my story and then be able to take ownership of their own eternity, then that's beautiful. But if you just listen to my story and that's what you're defined by, that's a religion. That's not spirituality.
Well, people will notice in this conversation we've spoken very little about the NDE, and we've spoken a lot about all of other things, which is kind of great.
That's the goal.
But what I wanted to say, okay, I've forgotten my train of thoughts. I've got so many questions going through my mind. I've got to pick one as they pass through. Pick one. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about the next book. Oh, yeah, there's the question. There it is. When you were experiencing your past lives, did you experience any lives in other dimensions and other planets and other worlds?
It's a wonderful question. I have to be completely transparent. The closest thing to another dimension, I would say, was this lifetime that I had within Atlantis. That was something different, that was different than this dimension. Mm-hmm. But in a sense, and I speak about this in Life After Breath, when I had my near-death experience, we have this physical reality. And if you ever watch Stranger Things, there's this alternative reality to this Earth. And so there's this overlaying stratosphere of this planet with the same kind of things, but they're amplified. Mm-hmm. And so when I had this, I was traveling country to country all over the globe within different lifetimes, spanning the entire planet. But it was an overlaying of this Earth, and it was just kind of like this Earth on steroids. And so and on the other side, my viewpoint is there's different layers. And the more that it just has this light being, the more of a higher octave it is. And the more dense it is, the more it's kind of closer to this planet. Mm-hmm. But I would say within my past lives, I was able to span it. But what's interesting about the other side is a lack of dimensions and a lack of front, back, side, left, right. It's all just this. When you think of eternity, it's not just time, it's just infinite reality.
It's an orchestra of different frequencies.
Yeah. And but what I'd say, is it all the way over there? It's beyond this planet, beyond comprehension, and it's here at the same time.
Yes.
I've learned, obviously, seeing the angels right in front of me, they're right here, right overlaying this reality. Right. You just simply tune up, the radio dial a little bit, and boom, right there in front of you, on a filter right above this overlay. Yeah. It's right here.
It's all energy and information vibrating at different frequencies. It's somewhat similar to a fan. When it's going slowly, you can see it clearly. So we operate.
That's an awesome analogy.
Low frequency. And when you speed up the fan, it disappears. So their energy is so fast that we can't see it with our physical eyes. But if we raise our vibration to meet their vibration, we start to see them more clearly. Whether we do that with our third eye or our physical eyes. Another question. So have you explored, because you do hypnotherapy in past lives, have you explored any of your galactic lives or any other people's galactic lives, or do you just do Earth lives? Do you just explore Earth lives?
I stick with the boring stuff.
It's not boring. Earth is not boring. To the cosmos, Earth is the most exciting show in the universe.
No. Not yet. But it's definitely something that's pondered in my mind. I think the biggest separating component with spirituality and religion is the open-endedness and the exploration of it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's so exciting, where, I had this experience and I went to the other side, but, it's a small glimpse of it. Mm-hmm. It's a small glimpse of eternity. Yeah. And I don't think we could ever have a full possessiveness of it all. We could have glimpses and understanding on our own levels of consciousness, know, and so the constant ability to look at life through different lenses and explore on a regular basis, I think that's just so exciting. That's life itself. It's a constant unfoldment of eternal awareness and eternal expanded consciousness. I think death to me is once you have a closed interpretation of something, it has no room to grow. It's flatlined.
Mm-mm.
You know?
So before we close, I'd like to chat about your next book. So you work as a hypnotherapist and you explore past lives, people's past lives. What sort of hypnotherapy do you do? Do you take them back to their soul's perspective, as in QHHT, or do you just, when I say just, are you kind of hopping through past lives?
I do in utero as well too. So the life in between life. I do past lives. I do higher selves. I do communication with loved ones on the other side, and opening up awareness. And, you know, so these are some of the factors that I have within, you know, past life regression. But within hypnosis, I do things that are just very much of this earth kind of things, just cigarette cessation, weight loss, confidence boosting.
Oh, okay.
You know,
So,
I love hypnosis. What I love about it is so versatile. It's like you're trying to do something, but you're just hitting that wall and you don't know why. And it's a great way to break through.
Well, I've got one of those, Jake. I might reach out to you for some help. I've got a brick wall that I've been trying to get through. I was like, and I've got total access to my guides and all the ascended masters and dead people and everything, but I still hit this little brick wall. So might just reach out to you for some help.
Please do. And I think
you must
it's
have
about
had
getting that point of entry.
Of entry. You must have so many experiences that you've, you know, gained through your work. What's your second book about? Are you putting those experiences in the second book, or what are you talking about in the second book?
I have no idea. No.
Oh, you haven't read it?
No. My second book is my experience happened on a ladder, much like Jacob from the Bible, like Jacob's ladder. In Genesis, you know, Jacob had this dream where angels were going up and down the ladder. It sounds too good to, you know, people just don't believe me because of so many of these things that are just feels too good to be true. But my next book is on different rungs of the ladder and finding different ways to understand the lessons of the afterlife to bring it into the here and now. I do that, you know, in a bit with Life After Breath, but this is a sequel and a continuation and a direct, you know, lesson, you know, basis, as well as I have different, you know, meditations that I have sprinkled within the book. And so I'm trying to think of a title, kind of like the wisdom of Jacob's ladder, but you know, you have to have like 2 or 3 words to fit in a book. So I'm counting on you, Karen. If you have a title, if even that's at 2 a.m, you know, I'm all open for it. So I'm just getting stuck. You know what's interesting, guys? We see one thing, the whole world could implode in flames, but if we're focused on one thing, that's all we'll see. Where females are able to multitask a lot easier. So I mean, if you're able to if you know that, let me know. But I'm kind of stuck in my own way with this title.
All right, I was just about to say this is true, and then my guides piped in and they said, only true if you believe it. And I'm like, damn, they always do that. You know, every time I come up with something that I believe to be true, they smash it into a million pieces and say, only true if you believe it. So men have the ability to multitask just as much as women.
It's a cultural
thing. It's a cultural belief. It's a cultural hypnosis. And men have the ability, and women have the ability to focus like a man. And so, yeah, it's a cultural, belief. And what do you want to believe?
I got something very funny for you. Before the show, I've got like someone who I know off of social media. He's, you know, got a big following. He's known as like the seatbelt medium. His name is Thomas John. He's a big medium here.
What did you call him? Seatbelt.
His name is Thomas John. Thomas John. He had like a television show called the Seatbelt Medium, where literally he was like a cab driver for people in cars on a show, and he would give them readings as a cab driver. It's a great idea.
Sounds like so much fun.
People, you know, it's pretty cool. It's on Amazon if you're interested.
I have to check it out. Seatbelt Medium.
He had a book called Never Argue with the Dead Person or something along those lines. And I'm like, why am I hearing this over and over again? Never argue with the dead person. It's just like, okay, that was maybe for that. But yeah, you never argue with spirit. Spirit never leads us astray. You know, those in the heavens, those guiding us, we should never argue with them because their awareness is infinitely greater than our own. I firmly believe that.
Look, absolutely. And even though they have this infinite awareness, we as humans still argue with our guidance. I do all the time. I'm like, seriously? You want me to do that? They say, look, this is a possibility for you. And I go, oh my God, that sounds like a lot of work. Do I really? I don't want to do that. And they go, your choice. I said, I'll think about it. So I've been mulling it over for 8 years. Anyway, it'll unfold and it'll happen one day. But I said, if you want me to do this thing, I'm not going to do it alone. I need to get a team. And they said, yeah, we didn't ask you to do it alone. Get your team around you, get a whole lot of people to create this thing. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. So yeah, I argue with them all the time, chat with them, argue with them.
Don't never argue with them, as Thomas would say.
I've got to check out the Seatbelt Medium. That sounds like so much fun.
It's a real cool show. It's a good idea. Literally, I mean, how he concentrates on the road while he's giving a reading is beyond, but he's very gifted, but literally he'll be driving the car and then stuff will be coming in and he doesn't get into any accidents.
You know what I'd like to see from you, Jacob, is I'd like to see written down, not that I've read anything you've written down yet, but some of your psychic experiences and conversations with Wayne Dyer and some of the experiences you've had in your hypnotherapy, talking to people's higher selves and guides, or just your conversation, you bantering with Wayne Dyer would be fabulous, even if you wrote an article about it. I reckon that would be really fun. What do you think? Do you think that would be fun to read or listen to?
We go at each other. I mean, part of the issue is, it's like, how could I put this? You have a relationship with someone, but then the family knows another side of them. So it's hard while people are still close to them and still grieving for the guy, to have something that public. And so it's more of a private thing. But I think in a way, it's our own relationship. I can't speak for the biological family, and I don't have a monopoly. All I could speak of is that dynamic. But I could say we definitely mess around with each other and don't go at each other a lot. We know how to we know how to go at each other. But it's interesting. But geez, what was I about to say? What did you do to me? No, okay.
He's not concerned about that.
Every time I get a reading, the first thing that any medium says is, when are you going to do readings? Because so-and-so is telling me it's time for you to do readings. I'm like, oh God. I've kind of came out of the NDE closet, but the psychic closet, I'm still afraid, but maybe down the road I will. But with every reading, they're like, you should be, and I do give readings by Reiki sessions, but, and sometimes in therapy, but they're like, you have gifts, and I know I do, but I'm just still trying to hone that. And
I'm going to do something with you while we've still got the camera on and not after, because often I do this with people after I turn the camera off and have these long conversations with people, and I always think, I wish I kept the camera on. Just a little thing with you. So you said, people have told me that I need to do readings because I've got this ability, but I'm still afraid. What are you afraid of?
It's a lot of things, but what I would say is this: it's psychic and medium stuff. I view as it's a very responsible position. I think for yourself, people are hurting, and I feel that you have to come to a point where you bring it. And so there's that pressure on myself where people are very much hurting, and they're struggling and they're going through grief.
What you're afraid of is your own self-criticism, your own rules that you've set
up. That and people who are hurting and not getting the accurate information.
Jacob, I'm going to throw your words back at you. I'm sorry, I'm just doing this on camera. I hope you don't mind. If you don't mind.
That's okay.
You said to me that Wayne Dyer said when people email him and said, what you said I don't agree with. He said, you can be connected, head, heart, spirit, and bring through, and then you have to leave the rest of it to you can't control what people think. So wouldn't you apply that to your own work?
No, that's good. And what we should do is we should save this, because in a couple of years from now, when I have my own psychic television show, we could go back to this, and give you all the cred. We have proof and pudding right here, on film, on camera.
I had Mary Rodwell in my home, beautiful dear friend who's should they call her the alien lady, who's been hypnotizing people for years, and she's hypnotized thousands of people. When I say hypnotized, she's brought them to the awareness of their galactic lives and their other dimensional lives and their mission here on Earth and why they're here and what they're here to do during this transitioning time and on planet Earth. And she teaches this technique, and she says, what I teach, which is beyond what other hypnotherapy teachers teach, is I teach the hypnotherapist to expand their psychic awareness so that they travel with their client. And this is what you're doing, right? So it's not just you
indirectly, yeah.
Right. And that's what I do when I'm working with people too. When they see things, I see things, the same thing. And sometimes I'll see it before they do, and they'll see it, and then I'll see it, or I'll see it, and then I'll tell them, and then they'll see it, or I'll see things that I don't want to see. And then I'll think, damn, how do I say this to them? And then I'll ask them what they're seeing, and then they'll see it. And it's so great. So we're traveling into the cosmos together, you know, and what I can't see, they see, and what they can't see, I see. And so there's this expansion in consciousness. And I'm sure that you're already doing that. So that's how you're utilizing your psychic abilities. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get on psychic TV and do readings. Do teacup readings or tarot card readings.
Yeah.
You know,
It's funny how, you know, as a therapist or as a hypnotherapist, the one skill that's not taught is intuition. And I agree with you. That's a great asset within your client work. I know, for instance, in the US, the legendary psychic Sylvia Brown was a past life regression therapist, you know, and she would use her psychic skills to join the person. And so certainly that's something that I will definitely entertain. I know I do that with Reiki, and, you know, that comes up a lot, but between psychotherapy, hypnosis, you know, that could definitely put clients with better help, better resistance, better support. So for sure.
Well, darling one, there's a lot more to come from you. You're young, you're passionate, you're enthusiastic. Can't wait to see what else unfolds. And you're ambitious, which is wonderful to be ambitious in this arena rather than being ambitious in the stock market or, you know, whatever. To be, you know, like ambitious to expand the consciousness and share the love and spread the message. It's wonderful to see that. That's what I live for.
Wayne would say, I'm in kind of like that warrior stage of life, right? You know, I'm just, you know, kind of hungry and all that stuff.
Hungry, yeah.
Motivated, all that stuff. So it's good. It's good to be young and to use that energy, you know, for greater good. So
it's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared with us today on the show. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. My honor to be here with you. Thank you, Karen.
A wonderful conversation with Jacob Cooper. It's interesting. I had seen a couple of his interviews. He was saying after I turned off the recording that he liked that it was free flowing. I had not set questions and we just let the conversation go where it was going to go. Could have gone so many other places. But yeah, I had seen some of his interviews and I'd seen him sort of repeating the same thing on each interview. And I thought, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want it to be like everybody else's interview. If you want to see him talk about specific things, you know, I like to share the love. I'm not into competition, like only watch this on my show. I like to have something different. And hopefully we had another conversation that he didn't have on other shows today. We got into so many things. Wayne Dyer was so present. I love Wayne. You know, I was saying that I had that regret that I didn't meet him physically and sort of hug him and say, thank you so much for how you've changed my life, because I was in vanity. I didn't want to seem like a silly little fan or whatever. I was in my 20s. I was young. But he said to me after he passed, which many spirits say, you don't have to worry. I'm here. I'm here now. You can talk to me now. Just because I'm not in the physical doesn't mean you can't still sort of hug me and say thank you. And I will receive your gratitude and appreciation. Yes, Wayne, he's so beautiful and so busy on the other side, teaching and guiding people. So obviously Jacob's one of the people he guides, and he helps people write. So maybe if you want to write some spiritual about life after death or about spirituality, call on Wayne Dyer. He's available to help you get your music out of you, is what he used to say to people. I want to die. I want to get my music out of me before I die. So if you want to get your music out of you before you die, call on Wayne. He'll come and help you. So beautiful. But Jacob was fascinating, wasn't he? Just fascinating. He's so highly intelligent and intellectual. Yeah. Lots more to come from Jacob Cooper. So I'm going to invite him into the Inner Sanctum as a guest teacher. Maybe you've got some queries and questions for him, or his hypnotherapy work, or life after life, or maybe you've got some questions for me. If you do, join our tribe, and we're on each week chatting about all this stuff. And what did he call it? Cognizance reframing. Oh, big word. I'll probably never remember it. I'm sort of geeking out on the divine choreography, which is what Michael said, the divine choreography. Jacob talked about that as well. When he was a 3-year-old dying, he could see all the angels and the masters and the teachers and all the help available to him as his body was dying, as his physical body was dying, and he was given the choice. So what are you going to do? You're going to stay? You're going to go? You're going to come back? You're going to stay there? You're going to do what you said you wanted to do? But he could see that divine choreography. And what I love about that is that no matter what is happening in our lives, whether we're just driving the car or washing the dishes or dying or having some horrendous thing or our house is burning down, behind the scenes, behind the smokescreen of the world, the illusion of the world, the play, the actors on the stage, is this divine choreography going on where we are never alone. We are surrounded by angels and our guides, and our higher self, of course, is always on tap to share its wisdom with us and help us heal. I think it was Robert Henry, the angel said through Robert Henry, that our higher self is there to help us heal the physical body, because it has our DNA, perfect balanced DNA blueprint of the original design of the physical body, because the higher self is the part of us that designed the physical attributes that we incarnate into, be it good or bad. It's been designed by the higher self for the purpose of the exploration of consciousness in this lifetime. So there is a divine blueprint that you can tap into if you are out of balance in your physical body and you're displaying dis-ease. Fascinating, isn't it? I've chatted to my higher self about that. Okay, bring on the original blueprint of health and thinness and all that sort of stuff. Bring it on. Anyway, so interesting. I'm not going to say too much more today. Fascinating. Always love my conversations on the show. Always wonderful. Gives you things to think about. Let me know if you had any aha moments during that conversation, any queries, any questions, any comments. Please comment and let me know what you think of the shows. I do love reading your comments and usually always reply. Not to everyone, but I try to reply to everyone. But I do love reading them. And remember to subscribe if you're enjoying the shows. Or send me an email if you've got interesting things to share. And I'll see you all next time. Remember to buy the book Awakened by Death. Lots more in that book, people sharing their amazing experience of their spiritual awakening through the death experience, much like Jacob's was. Love you all big time. Bye for now.